Okay. So in the previous class, we looked at four very important notions of propositional logic. The first one we proved completeness, which says that every valid formulae in propositional logic can be derived using the system AX. Right? That's what we did. We showed the completeness of AX. Then we looked at finite satisfiability, which says that like any arbitrary set of formula is satisfiable if and only if a finite subset is satisfiable. I mean, if and only if every finite subset is satisfiable. And then we looked at compactness and then strong completeness using compactness. Strong completeness says that given an arbitrary collection of formulae as our hypothesis, from there we can derive a formula if and only if it is a consequence of the given set of formula. Okay. So these are the four notions that we looked at in the previous class. So today we are going to take a short visit to something called conjunctive normal form and then closal forms, two different ways of expressing propositional logic formulae. So what is the conjunctive normal form? Suppose you are given a propositional logic formula. So we know that there are several rules that we have studied, like De Morgan's laws and the distributive laws and things like that. So this basically allow us to modify the way a formula is written, right? When you take the bracket outside or bracket inside, negation inside the bracket or negation outside the bracket of conjunctions or disjunctions, whatever, then the formula that you get is a differential formula, even though it is logically equivalent. As a formula, it is different, right? So, question is that can you have a nice way to express this, right? In a more structured manner. So, conjunctive normal form is a particular way of writing any propositional logic formulae as a conjunction of disjunctions of literals. Okay? So you have you have several. So literal is basically either an atomic formula or its negation. Right? If let's say P is an atomic formula, then negation P is its negation. So P and negation P are both literals. But if I write negation P, that is not a literal. So or X or P and Q is not a literal. So P is a literal, Q is a literal. Negation P is a literal, negation Q is a literal. So we can write the entire formula as a conjunction of disjunctions of literals. This means that I can write something like P or Q and P dash or Q dash and P dash or Q dash or R dash, something like that, right? So these things are allowed, right? So every thing that we are going to write, so you have one bracket, you have set of disjunctions there. Another bracket, you have set of disjunctions there. Another bracket, you have set of disjunctions there. Then you put a conjunction between each of these brackets. So that's how you get that is a formula, and that is we call conjunctive normal form. So it's a conjunction of disjunctions. So you don't have implications or bidirectional, biconditional statements in the CNF format. Okay? So we will allow both negation and or, but negation is only allowed together with a letter, an atomic proposition. So what are the examples? So here is an example: P or negation Q or R, and negation P or negation R, and Q or P and negation R. So these are all disjunctions. Like even literal by itself is also a disjunction, right? There is nothing else there. So we have this nice way of expressing things. Then you have another example: alpha or beta or negation delta. Then conjunction, negation of alpha or beta or negation gamma and negation beta. But this is not a conjunctive normal form because negation I have put outside the bracket, right? This is not allowed. So therefore the second example is not a CNF, right? Even though it is a disjunction of conjunction, but there is a negation of disjunctions which are in the bracket. So that is not allowed in the CNF form. So the first one is a CNF, second one is not. Here is another example: alpha or negation beta or delta, and P and negation Q or R within bracket and negation Q. This is also not a CNF because you have a negation distributed by a conjunction, I mean a disjunction there, right? P and not Q or R, that is not allowed again. On the other hand, the fourth one is another example of a CNF: A or B or C or D, and A or negation B and negation B. Right? So these are this is well formed. This is in CNF. So we have several such formulas we can write. Now the point is that if one of the formula is given to you, can you always convert it into a formula in the CNF form? So every formula in propositional logic can be transferred into an equivalent CNF formula. This is the theorem. Okay. I am not going to give you a complete proof of the theorem, but I will give you an algorithm which will do this conversion, and I will leave it to you to verify how this algorithm can convert every formula into a CNF form. So what is the algorithm? So algorithm is given as follows. So first we eliminate operators, implication and bidirectional, by substitution of well-formed formulae by equivalent formulae as below. Right? We already know this equivalence of formulae. So whenever we see implication or bidirectional, we are going to use the following substitution for uh, replacing that. Right? So whenever I see A, if and only if B, then I convert into A implies B and B implies A. This is equivalent, right? A implies B and B implies A is equivalent to A if and only if B. Now once I get it into this form, right? So I removed all the bidirectionals. Then I have only the implication arrows, right? So A implies B is equivalent not A or B, right? Negation A or B. This one also we have already proved earlier. So therefore I can replace now all these implications with negation of the first one and first literal and then or B. So this we do. So once I do this all conversions, we don't have any implications or bidirectionals in the formula. We have only negations, disjunctions and conjunctions. Now what we do? Now we push the negations inside by using De Morgan's laws, because we don't want negations of things within in a bracket, right? So we put all the negations inside by using De Morgan's laws. So what are the De Morgan's laws? Negation of A or B is negation A and negation B. And negation of A and B is negation A or negation B. Right? These are the De Morgan's laws. So we use this to put all the negations together with its literals. Right? It pushes inside. So you do this until they appear only on literals. You don't have anything else. Like you can have negation, 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 whatever something, but it is going to be a literal. You don't have any brackets there. Right? So whenever there is a negation, there is no bracket on which it is applying. It is only applying directly to some literal or its negations. Okay. So this way we convert all the negations close to literals. But now there could be double or triple or even many multiple negations in a sequence, in a chain. So we can eliminate double negations because we already know that double negation A is equivalent to A. So whenever I see two of the negations, I will just cancel out, right? So if there are 5 negations, I will remove 4 of them by doing this twice, and then I get negation A, right? So that way I can eliminate all the double negation. Once I finish all this thing, I use distributive laws to eliminate the conjunctions. Okay. So whenever there are conjunctions inside, we use distributive laws so that it becomes all distributed disjunctions. So you have disjunctions, and then so this is all for each part of this. So then I have a conjunction of disjunctions. This is how I convert it into this form. So you can try this. This is a nice exercise, and try to see that it always works, and how it works and why it works. You can think about it. And here is an example. Suppose I want to convert not P implies not Q implies P implies Q to the CNF form, conjunctive normal form. So I apply the procedure. So this is equivalent to, so I have this big implies there, right? And then you have all the other small implies. So I convert each of them. So the inside, if I convert P implies Q, then I get negation P or Q. If I convert negation P implies negation Q, I get negation P or negation Q. Then I have to convert the big outside implication, so that I will get negation of the first thing, which is negation of what I already converted into negation P or negation Q, or the second thing as it is, which is negation P or Q, right? So I get the, after the conversion I get this form. So once I get to this form, I use to push negation inside, right? So I put the negation inside by De Morgan's laws. I get triple negation P and double negation Q, or negation P or Q, because this is only applying in the first bracket. Then I remove the double negations by the formula. So double negations is gone, negation P, and double negation Q, double negation is gone. I just get Q. So negation P and Q, or negation P or Q, right? So now I have this this disjunction of conjunction. I mean, there is a conjunction and then a disjunction to some other disjunction. So therefore I apply the distributive laws. So I can apply now, distribute the negation P to the disjunction, and then again negation Q, Q to the disjunction. So I get negation P or negation P or Q, and Q or negation P or Q. Now this is already in CNF form, so I don't have to do anything else, even though there are repetition of things which I can actually avoid, but I don't worry about those things, right? So I get negation P or negation P or Q, and Q or negation P or Q, right? So these two are disjunctions, and then there I have conjunction of disjunctions. So I get a CNF form. So I have converted this implication to CNF form. So this way I can convert every formula to CNF. Now something very related to the CNF is what is called a clausal form. Okay, so we need clausal form in what we are going to use called technical resolution. We are going to use technical resolution. So what is a clause? A clause is a set of literals considered as a disjunction of its member literal. Okay, so I can have literals which are basically atomic formulae or its negations, right? Either like I have P0, P1, P2, etc. So those things are there, and negation P0, negation P2, negation P3, negation PQ, etc. Right? These things are there. So these are our literals. Now I take a set of these literals. Suppose I give you a set, let's say P, comma Q, comma negation R. Okay. So these three literals I give you. I say this is a set of literals, and I say this is a clause. If I say this is a clause, right, then the assumption is that I take the disjunction of its member literals. So I get P or Q or negation R, okay, as the disjunction of its literal. So a clause is a disjunction of its literals. A set of clauses defines a formula as the conjunction of its clauses. So every clause is a disjunction of its literals. Set of clauses defines a formula by the assumption that each set or each clause is the disjunction, and we have a conjunction of these clauses, right? Conjunction of the disjunctions. So it's basically CNF only, but written in a much more compact way. Right? I just write the literals as a set. So that way we can avoid, for example, like, negation P or negation P or Q. So I have negation P appearing many times in the disjunction. We don't really need it appearing twice, because if one is 2, then the other one is also the same thing, right? So same value. So I can actually as well remove it, right? So therefore, when I look it into clausal form, I will only have not P comma Q, right, as a set. Similarly, Q comma not P as a set in the second one, right? So I have two clauses, not P comma Q and Q comma not P, right, from this example. So these two clauses and the conjunction of these clauses, right? So I will get the same formula, but much more compact. In fact, I want to make it even more compact, so I am going to introduce another notation. So the CNF formula I just mentioned above, right, is equivalently written as so the CNF formula, which is not Q or not P or Q, and P or not P or Q or P or not P, is written as not Q comma not P comma Q as first clause, and P comma not P comma Q as the second clause. Right? So I have these two. So I write as a set of two sets. Each one is a clause. So they have I get a clausal form for the same formula. But now I avoid repetitions here. For example, P appears twice, right? And negation P appears twice, but they will only appear once in the clausal form, because that is the genuine disjunction of these things. Okay? So I have a CNF formula converted into clausal form. So I know that every formula now can be converted into clausal form, because I know that every formula can be converted into CNF form. Right? CNF is conjunctive norm into CNF. Okay. Now to simplify this notation further, because I want to write it much more compact. So what I am going to write negations of negations of atomic propositions by the following form, that like if I want to write negation P, I write P bar on the top. Okay, so only in clausal form I am going to use this notation. So we write negation P in the form P bar. Okay, and now I just write as a string of these literals. Now because I can easily read this, because I write P bar Q, then I know that it is P comma P bar comma Q, right? So P comma negation P comma Q, right? So therefore I can write it as a string of literals, because by using this simple device of writing it as a bar instead of. So I can now treat each of these characters as a literal as it is. So therefore, what I am going to write the following form. Uh, the formula that is given here, negation, the clausal form, it is negation Q comma negation P comma Q and P comma negation P comma Q. This I can write as Q bar P bar Q and P bar Q, right? P bar Q means that P negation P comma Q as a clause, and Q bar P bar Q means that negation Q negation P and Q as a clause. So this is two clauses and their conjunction. So this is much more shorter way to write this. This is going to be useful when we want to work out this and do some calculations uh, to use resolution as a technique. So is the notation clear? I believe. Okay. So now I am going to give a couple of theorems. So these theorems I am not going to give the proof, but I expect you to know the proof. So I want you to work out the proof. Even though I am not writing it as a homework, I would like you to do this. Sometimes we might ask this as part of your assignments or exams and things like that. Later we will see. Okay, so try to prove it yourself. right? Think about it, discuss whatever you want, but try to find a proof by yourself, okay, and then write it down. So if a literal, so this is the theorem. So if a literal L occurs in some clause of a formula F, okay, but its complement, right? So complement of a literal is if I have the letter as a atomic formula P naught, then its complement is negation P naught or P naught bar. Okay, but if I have negation P naught as the literal, then its complement is P naught itself. Very easy. Uh, so so we have the complement does not appear in any clause of F. Okay, so suppose one literal occurs in some clause, but its complement does not appear anywhere. Then I can reduce F by deleting every clause that contains L. Okay. Now it says that this new F dash is satisfiable if and only if F is satisfiable. Okay. So I am going to make a shorter formula by doing this, right? So I am going to delete a literal whose complement does not appear everywhere, and then I say that okay, the first clause is satisfiable. I mean, the first formula is satisfiable if and only if the second formula is satisfiable. They are not logically equivalent. Okay? They are not logically equivalent, but we are saying that one is satisfiable if and only if the other is satisfiable. Because if I can find a satisfying assignment for f, I can find a satisfying assignment for f dash, and if I can find an assignment for f dash, then I can find an satisfying assignment for f. Why is this? Well, because the complement, like, I mean, as intuitively it is very clear, because since the complement does not occur, if I have a satisfying assignment for the formula without this disjunction which does not have this literal, then I can find an assignment where this literal which does not occur in the second formula to be made true, right? That is also an assignment, right? Any assignment is an assignment, right? So we have possible assignments. So I take the other assignment, but I just change the assignment for this particular literal to be true, right? Because its complement is not appearing. So that will make all these disjunctions to be true, right? So we have conjunction of disjunctions. Each of these disjunctions where L is appearing is now true. Therefore, the entire thing becomes satisfied because f dash was satisfied, right? Similarly, we can also show the other direction. Okay? So that is even more trivial. But I want you to think about this and write it as a nice proof. Okay. So here is some example. I have the formula f, which is given alpha, beta, gamma bar, alpha, beta bar, and alpha bar beta. So this is the clausal form of f. Now I observe that gamma bar is appearing, but its negation or its complement is not appearing, right? Since its complement is not appearing anywhere else, I can remove the clause that contains gamma bar, which is alpha, beta, gamma bar, and then I get f prime as just alpha, beta bar and alpha bar beta, right? The other thing is not there. Now, since uh, gamma does not appear, or the complement of gamma bar does not appear, then I just deleted it. So now suppose, so I am going to show that, like, there is this assignment, right? V of valuation, V of alpha is equal to f and V of beta is equal to true. That makes the f bar to be true, right? So if that is true, then uh, then that is true, then I can just put gamma bar to be true to get an assignment that will make f also true, right? Because gamma bar does not appear in f prime, whatever I give it to that is not going to change the satisfiability of f bar, right? I mean, the truth value of f bar. So I'm going to just change it to whatever I want. So in this case, I want it to be true. So therefore, this becomes f becomes true. So therefore, satisfiability of f bar results in satisfiability of f. So I want to stress again that f bar is not logically equivalent to f, because if they are logically equivalent, then every valuation should give the same truth value to both of them. But in this case, for example, I can verify that v of alpha is equal to f, v of beta is equal to f, and v of gamma is equal to t, makes the first formula to be true and the second formula to be false. Okay, f to be true and f bar to be false. So therefore, they are not logically equivalent, but the satisfiability is there. Okay. So this is what we have. Now, when I write in clausal form, okay, I can give because it's a set, the set can be empty. So I can have a set which is empty, right? So there is no clauses. So empty set of clauses. A set of clauses which is empty is called is denoted by the empty set. Okay. So suppose I have an empty set of clauses. Similarly, I can have a clause which is empty, which means that there are no literals inside the clause. Okay. Suppose I have a clause without any literals. Then I denote it by this square symbol, okay, box symbol, which is the empty clause. So, can you think of the properties of these two uh, notions? So, suppose I have empty clause. Can you think whether it is satisfiable or anything related to that, or if empty clause, can you say it is satisfiable or not? If you think about it, one can easily show that the empty set of clauses is always valid, and the empty clause is not satisfiable. Okay. So empty set of clauses is valid, which means the tautology, and empty set empty clause is not satisfiable. Okay. So again, I want you to think about and write a proof for this on your own, but I will give you the proof in words as as the main idea. Suppose I have a set of clauses, then it is valid if and only if every clause is true under each valuation, right? That is what the definition of validity, right? Validity says that under every valuation, every clause must be true, because if every clause is true, then its conjunction is going to be true, right? Each one is true, then its conjunction is true. So set of clauses is valid if and only if every clause is true under each valuation. So if there is no clause at all, right, then we have this to be trivially true. Therefore, phi is going to be valid. I mean, the empty set of clauses is going to be valid. What about I have empty clause? So now, a clause is satisfiable if and only if some valuation makes it at least one of the literals in the clause to be true. Right? That is the definition of clause by way of disjunction. Right? A clause is a disjunction of its literals, and this disjunction is true if and only if at least one of them is true. Right? But there is nothing there to be true. So therefore, it cannot be satisfiable, right? Because it can never be true, and that is not satisfiable. If that is not going to be true, right? One of the clauses is not true, then the entire formula is not going to be true, and therefore it's not satisfiable. So if I have an empty clause in some of the as one of the clauses in the formula, then I know that this formula is never satisfiable. And so that gives the idea to somehow use this earlier property that we noted and some similar properties to come up with a way to check whether a given formula is satisfiable or not by making it smaller and smaller till we get into something that we can easily check to be satisfiable. And if I for example produce the empty clause as a result of this operation, then I know that this should not be satisfiable at all. So that is our idea. So how are we going to do this? So we have this following theorem. So the theorem says that let f be a clausal formula having a unit clause. Okay, so unit clause is a single literal. Then f is satisfiable if and only if the formula f bar or f dash obtained by deleting every clause that contains this literal L. Okay, so you have a unit clause L, then which contains, which is the literal inside this clause is single literal L. Then you can get a new formula by deleting every clause containing this particular literal. Okay, whenever this L is occurring in some clause, I just delete the clause. By then I delete L bar from every clause that is satisfiable. Okay, I don't delete the clause, but I only delete the literal from the clause where L bar is or L complement is occurring. So whenever L complement occurs from some clause, I delete L complement. Whenever I have just whenever I have L appearing in some clause, then I delete that clause itself. I remove that clause itself. This is only if I have a clause which is unit clause that contains only L, right, singleton L. In that case, I do this. Okay. So the claim is that the first formula is satisfiable if and only if the second one is satisfiable. So I am not going to prove it again. So I want you to think about the proof. It's not very difficult. This once you understand these things, or once you have already understood what we have covered so far, this is something that is kind of easy to derive. Okay, so I want you to do that. Okay. So now just as a passing mention, uh, you know, if I can write a formula in the conjunctive normal form, such that every disjunction has exactly 3 literals, suppose it is possible, then such a form is called 3CN. Okay, every formula can be written in this way is another theorem. Okay, so every clause or every disjunction has exactly 3 literals, and you have conjunction of literals, then it's called a 3CNF, and it is kind of surprising, right? Not very immediately intuitively clear why it is possible that, but every formula can be written in 3CNF. This is something I am not going to prove again. You can imagine this, like, but well, I'm not forcing. I mean, I am not asking you to really find a proof for this, but take it for granted. But you can think about it for some time just to see, is it possible? Can you do it? Or how do you find out an algorithm? There is an algorithm which is available anyway. If you want, you can do that or find out. Now we want to look at 3CNF is something which I mentioned because 3CNF comes as part of this complexity theory. And first the first NP complete that we mentioned earlier, the NP complete problem that was to show that a 3CNF formula, checking the satisfiability of 3CNF formula is NP complete. That is the first result proved in computer science. That is known to be that problem, first problem to be known to be and proved to be NP complete. Okay. So the first ever problem to be shown to be NP complete is the satisfiability of 3CNF is NP complete. Okay. So now we are going to look at a procedure called resolution, which can check for satisfiability of formulae. So what is the resolution? It's a refutation procedure. So refutation procedure is that it you try to prove something is not satisfiable uh, by deriving the empty clause from the set of clauses that is given. As I told you, if I ever reach the empty clause, then that is not satisfiable. Therefore, the entire thing is not satisfiable, provided that we can maintain satisfiability, right, in each step. So this technique is called resolution. So so we use it to prove that a formula is not satisfiable, and in fact, it can also show whether it is satisfiable by saying that okay, you will never reach empty clause. That will say that it is satisfiable. So a sequence of applications of a particular rule called resolution rule is the main idea in the resolution, that we are going to find out you know a pairs of clauses that contains conflicting literals, right? Like L and L bar, L complements, things like that. Then we are going to apply this resolution rule, and then after applying the resolution rule, that I get a formula, I add it to clause, I add it to this thing, and then I continue. This way, I do this till either I get the empty clause, or I get that the same set over and over again, right? Then I know that after I add the resolvent, then I get the same set of clauses again. Then I will stop and say that okay, this is going to be satisfiable. So the property of resolution is that it maintains satisfiability. Okay. So what is the resolution rule? Suppose C1 and C2 are clauses, and a literal is in C1 and its complement is in C2 for some particular given literal L. Then I write the resolvent of C1 and C2 as uh, as the union of C1 minus this literal L, because C1 contains L, and C2 minus L complement, because C2 contains L complement. Okay. So we have a literal and its complement. I remove the literal from the first clause and the complement literal from the second clause, and take the union of these two. So this, because these are sets, right? So I can take union of these sets. So the resolvent is basically another set, which is another clause now. Okay. So I take the resolvent, and then I get resolvent of C1 and C2. Okay, let us look at an example first. Suppose I have the clause C1 to be alpha, beta, and gamma bar, and C2 to be beta, gamma, and delta bar. Then gamma bar is appearing in the first one, and gamma is appearing in the second one. So therefore, I can write the resolvent of these two, C1 and C2, as resolvent C is equal to alpha, beta, gamma bar minus gamma bar union beta, gamma, delta bar minus gamma. So of course, even though we write it as strings, we know that these are actually uh, set of elements, right? So therefore, basically alpha comma beta comma gamma bar minus singleton gamma bar. That's what we are going to do. So therefore, when I take the union, I get alpha beta union beta delta dash, which is alpha beta delta dash, again because it's a union of elements, right? Union of sets. So the resolvent of C1 and C2 is alpha beta delta bar. And the claim is that if alpha beta delta bar is satisfiable, then C1 and C2 must also be satisfiable simultaneously. So the another theorem says that the resolvent C is satisfiable if and only if the parent clauses C1 and C2 are satisfiable together, right? Simultaneously satisfiable. So this again is very easy to prove. I want you to find a proof for it. So think about it. So here I mention resolution algorithm, that how to apply resolution and find terminate it, saying that whether the given formula is satisfiable or not. So input is a set of clauses F, and output is whether F is satisfiable or unsatisfiable. So I start by assigning F naught to be F itself, and then Fi plus 1 is Fi union resolvent of C1 and C2, where C1 and C2 are two clauses that contain complementary literals. Okay, L and L complement for some literal L. So these are not a priori chosen. Like, so you take these two. So these two. So if I have already chosen some pairs of literals beforehand, then I don't want to choose it again. Okay, pairs of clauses C1 and C2 with the literal, then I don't want to choose it again. So I will I will only do it once for each of these. Okay, and suppose at some point the resolvent is the empty clause. Okay, so if C is the resolvent which is empty clause, then you stop and say that okay, the given formula is not satisfied. On the other hand, suppose I get Fi plus 1 is equal to Fi for all possible clashing clauses, then F is satisfiable. So whatever if I select and then I find the resolvent and I add it, I still get the same set, right? In that case, I say now also I can stop. F is satisfiable inside. Okay, so if I get the empty clause, I say that F is unsatisfiable. Stop. If I get the same set of clauses again and again for every possible clashing clauses, then F is satisfiable. So this is the algorithm. Very simple, and this procedure always produces the output saying it is satisfiable or not. So an example is given here. Let us say F is the set of clauses P bar Q R bar and P bar Q bar R. Okay. So what I am going to do, the resolution is as follows. I write down these things one by one. So I write 1 is P, 2 is P bar Q, 3 is R bar, 4 is P bar Q bar R, which are the given clauses. Then I write the next clause as a resolvent of 3 and 4 because 3 and 4 contains R bar and R, right? So 3 contains R bar and 4 contains R, right? So the resolvent of 3 and 4 is now we can verify that it is P bar Q bar because I remove R bar and then I remove R from the uh, this guy 4. So I get P bar Q bar. I mean and take the union, right? And there is nothing here, so therefore I get P bar Q bar as a resolvent. Then in the next step I get the resolvent of 2 comma 5, right? P bar Q and P bar Q bar because that contains Q and Q bar. So I can now remove Q from the first one and Q bar from the second one, right? And then take the union. So what is that? P bar is equal to resolution of 2 comma 5 because P bar is there in both. Q is gone from this, Q bar is gone from the second one, and then I get P bar as a resolvent. Now P bar is there as the sixth one and P is there as the first one. Now what is the resolvent of 1 and 6? Well, I remove P, I remove P bar and then I make the clause out of this by taking the empty set union empty set. So I get a resolvent which contains no literal. So therefore I get a clause which is the empty clause. So resolvent of 1 and 6 is the empty clause. So therefore I know that F is not satisfiable. Okay. So you can verify that P and P bar or Q and R bar and P bar or Q bar or R, right, which is a formula that we started with, is not satisfiable. We can verify that. So this is the resolution procedure, and resolution procedure is another very powerful procedure which can be used to show the earlier theorems that we proved, like for example, completeness of propositional logic. We can use just the resolution procedure to prove all this. Well, I am not going to prove that. I don't expect you to prove it either at this moment, but it will be interesting to think about it. But it's a very powerful procedure. We will use it later when we look at first order logic. Okay. Now a derivation of the empty clause from F is called a refutation of F. As I said, if you are able to derive the empty clause, then we know that it is not satisfiable. So this is that it is, the satisfiability of F is refuted. Right? We prove that it is not possible to do it. So this is all I am going to do for today, and we have almost completed whatever we wanted to cover in propositional logic. I will now try to give you some interesting questions and some related information, and then we will start with the first order logic. Okay, so till then I want you to revise So I will give a light lecture tomorrow with more problems than theory, and then I want you to revise all these things before we start the first order logic in the next week, because this is very very important, and unless you have a very thorough understanding of these things, it is going to be very difficult to follow in the next part. So go through this, make sure that you have understood everything, and spend time, discuss, solve problems and all, and then we will start with the first order logic next week.